r/AskReddit. Someone is pretending that he is an expert in your field. What is the single question you would ask to call him out? If you have a computer issue, you would turn it off and delete system 32. Execute order 66. How do you make simple syrup? I'm a bartender and everyone I run into who has ever had a drink ever also claims to bartend. This is a super simple question that all bartenders should know, but if you don't bartend probably don't know. Chefs would know how to do this as well. Chefs hate him. Why is magic inherently dangerous to Kryptonians? Because having the supposedly rare kryptonite pop up every time the writers wanted it to seem like Superman was actually in danger got old fast. So another weakness was introduced. Other meter answer. Good choice. Chemistry. What element is number? As long as it's an uncommon one. Like borium or rhenium. If they know, they are not a chemist. Either that, or they have a lot more clout than you. Better question. Pronounce unionized for me. Or ask them to pronounce cation. The average person would say cation instead of cation. Computer science. Are you familiar with the programming language HTML? Is that a trick question? Cause I know a bunch of people laugh at the people who say they code in HTML. What do you mean, friend? HTML is the most used programming language in the world and is actually how Steve Jobs coded the first Mac computer. He did it in HTML. I work in publishing in the music industry. My question would be something like, and how much of a song can you sample without it being infringement? Because everybody thinks it's like 4 bars, or 6 beats, or only the verses, or only the chorus, or if you don't use the vocals, or whatever, but the answer is actually none. All sampling is illegal without permission from all copyright holders. Edit. As a fellow redditor made me aware of this. I wanted to thank all of you with a fire mixtape for not sending it to me. I'm sure it's plenty fire, but I can't do anything with your mixtape other than listen to it. I cannot get it in front of anybody that will make you famous, so it would have been a wasted effort anyway. All sampling is illegal without permission from all copyright holders. That is not correct for works of education, satire, or commentary. Not correct for music either. But exactly what a music producer would want you to believe. Ask if they have a degree in theoretical physics. I have a theoretical degree in physics. Damn. Beaten to a truly fantastic reference. I once in an interview asked a guy, so what routing protocol would you say you have the most experience in? He said, Cisco. For what position would this be most relevant? I guess most of my software experience has been more top level. Because I had to Google and make sure I understood the question. As a network administrator it would be important. Distal or proximal? Dead silence. Sips drinky poo shaken not stirred. Aha. A trick question. Doctor. You. Of course. Mean dorsal. Naturally. I meant visceral. Or perhaps mesial. I work with kids. What should we do about this situation? If their first reaction is punishment as opposed to resolution, well then yikes. That reminds me of the psych screen we went through as part of the credentialing process. Swear to God it was like this. 1. A student is being highly disruptive in the classroom and you cannot continue the lesson. What do? A. Do nothing and call their parents later to itch about it. B. Remove the child from the classroom and have a conversation with them about their behavior outside. C. Physically drag the child to the front of the classroom and verbally berate and insult them at the top of your lungs in front of their peers. D. Shoot them in the face with a gun. They were so blatant as to what the proper answer was that I questioned how anyone who wasn't absolutely bonkers could fail it. Whoever wrote those answers needs tested. Or shot in the face. Go ahead and look down the barrel to make sure it's loaded. You first. Mental health. You have a client with borderline personality disorder. What therapy is designed for these patients? For years the canonical dark humor joke in the field was, what do you do for someone with borderline personality disorder? Answer, refer them. Dark humor. The only kind in medicine. One of our therapists who specialized into BPD had a whole caseload. Exclusively people with borderline. And not the crowd who had it together. Either. We would often hear her sessions from down the hall. The nurses all kept trying to guess what sedative she was on. I know CPR/first aid. How many compressions and breaths in a cycle? How many seconds between rescue breaths on an adult? An infant? What do you do if someone has a pulse but no breathing? And breaths are not going in? Breathing but no pulse? Trick question. They're a zombie. What is the process for identifying if someone is having a stroke? Edit. A lot of y'all have varying answers. Here is how it is currently taught in Red Cross lifeguard certification classes. 1. 30/2 cycle. As in lifeguarding, the need for CPR is almost universally due to lack of oxygen from drowning. If you are nowhere near water and the victim is not a child, constant compressions without breathing is recommended, as the oxygen in the bloodstream should already be sufficient. And keeping blood flowing is the priority. For infants, a 15/2 cycle using 2 fingers for compression. For adults, about a 2-inch compression. 1.5 inches for infants, at a cyclic rate of 90-120 compressions/minute. 2. Rescue breaths implies victim has pulse, no breathing, but breaths are entering the lungs easily. For adults, the going rate is 12 breaths/minimum, so a 5-second wait time. Consistent breaths without too much force. For infants, the rate is 20 b/m, so a 3-second wait time between breaths. 3. Jaw thrust and reassess airway. If blockage, chest compressions to attempt to dislodge. Re-evaluation every 3 sets of compressions to check airway for obstruction. Clear obstruction with finger if visible. If zombie, a blunt force trauma to head with heavy object. 4. Fast. Face. Ask victim to close their eyes and attempt to smile. Check if one side of face is drooping. Arms. Ask victim to raise arms to parallel. Inability fails test. Stutter/slur. Ask victim to say simple sentences, such as the sky is very blue today. Time to call EMS. If conditions met, call 911 immediately. These are of course all subject to change year in and year out. Highly recommend taking a basic Red Cross CPR/FAR course, so you don't just start beating on someone's ribs when they pass out, when they may need rescue breathing, spine stabilization, or simply to be placed in the recovery position. My last first aid course was 6 years ago. We learn 30/2 cycle. If they are a child or a drowning victim, start with 5 breaths first. If breaths aren't going in, the airway is blocked. We also learned not to check for a pulse, because most adults who don't breathe don't have a pulse either. Carrot. Different for children and drowning victims. Hence starting with 5 breaths in that case. Carrot. And because it's easy to misinterpret your own hand shaking or your own pulse for the patient's pulse. You're doing ABC. They switched it to CAB. Air quality control and brewing. So which growth media do you use? Is this just for yeast management? Or are you streaking out here to check for infections? Brett. Enteric. etc. Checking for contamination. I do spread plates and anaerobic tubes rather than streaks though. Briefly describe the procedural and substantive differences between a 12(b)(6) motion to dismiss, a 12(c) motion for judgment on the pleadings, and a Rule 56 motion for summary judgment. The part of me that always wanted to be a lawyer really wishes I could answer this question. It's really not that cool. Gonna have to trust me on this one. The question doesn't matter, but if the answer isn't, it depends. They are not a civil engineer. Pass marks may also be awarded for responding to any question with a question of their own. You sure you're not a rabbi? I can pretty much ask anything, and if they start the answer with anything but well, it depends. They are not a lawyer. Well, it depends. Programmer, Eddie. What is your Stack Overflow account name? Haven't got one. Started writing code in 1973. Been doing it professionally for 20 plus years now. You could probably share a lot of knowledge with the youngings. What is the powerhouse of a cell? Are you an expert at passing middle school biology? Don't want to brag or anything, but I graduated from preschool, so I'm expert at my 0 times tables. Tabs or spaces? Ah. Your profession is that one episode of Silicon Valley. Very niche. Better than being in the episode where you have to jerk everyone off in 10 minutes. I actually did this. I was running a jewelry store and was interviewing a potential bench jeweler, guy who actually makes / works on the jewelry, who was young but talked a big game. He'd told me all the awards he'd won and amazing pieces he'd made. So I asked him what was the biggest stone he'd ever broken. When he said, confidently, "I've never broken one," I thanked him for coming in and moved on with my day, either lying about no breaks or lying about how much work he'd done. What does breaking a stone mean? Setting diamonds or other gemstones is inherently risky. You are pushing metal against a fragile object. Any jeweler who has set an appreciable number of stones has scratched a soft stone like turquoise, chipped a corner off a diamond, or outright cracked a stone in half. Likely all of the above. My worst was a 10x 12mm aquamarine that I got too hot and quenched, cooled too fast, and shattered. Rookie mistake. Not that expensive, but irreplaceable because it had belonged to their grandmother. What was the first pornographic version of the Necronomicon? Wait, what's your area of expertise? Love, X, gender, and the Cthulhu mythos. I could also claim expertise on the history and development of tentacle erotica, but a guy in Italy dedicated an entire book to that. What's the difference between an EGS, MSI, DLL, and Master of Science file? DLLs are the ones that are always missing. Ding ding ding. You win a free trip to DLL hell. What would the correct ignition timing be on a 1955 Bel Air Chevrolet with a 327 cubic inch engine and a 4-barrel carburetor? That's a bullshit question. Does that mean that you can't answer it? Man, I'm actually having a hard time coming up with one. What does that say about me? When she throws herself on the ground sobbing for the millionth time that day, what is the reason why? The obvious answer is, I told her no. I didn't let her help me wipe my butt. It's snap time. I gave her the wrong cup. I wouldn't let her eat the cat litter. I took the garbage can away from her. I tried to put her shirt on her. I put the shirt away. I tried to put the wrong shirt on her. I let her try to put her shirt on herself. I tried to help her put her shirt on herself. I walked away and stopped helping her. Presidential assistant. I was having such a hit day. Thank you for the laugh. Rest and soap. JSON. Third party library that handles it for me. At what age is an American taxpayer required to start taking money from their retirement plan? The Fenny either doesn't know or applies with 70 1/2. The professional asks what type of plan. 70 1/2 is partial credit for traditional IRAs and many other types of plans. But not all. Yeah. You never have to take from a Roth. Right? What is the purpose of higher octane fuels? Reduce knock. Computer engineer. Describe temporal and spatial caching. Currently studying CPEN for my undergrad. Isn't temporal caching taking advantage of memory parts which the computer will access multiple times within a short amount of time and caching them? While spatial caching is taking advantage of memory locality, for example accessing element of an array with consecutive indices? Correct. Well done. Now what do you know about cache replacement schemes? Have you even read the opposite party's platform? Have you even read any of the other party's platforms? From a third party supporter in the USA. Thank you for your correction.